There's no good clips. And here we go. So,
all right, here we are, finally, dude.
Back from a very long hiatus, just due to the fact we had life catch up to us.
Yeah.
A little bit of sports, a little bit of cheerleading, a little bit of volleyball,
football.
Yeah, so many kids between the two of us.
It's like, what are you doing this weekend? Shit.
You know what I'm doing. The one weekend we were at the same cheer competition.
We were.
It's like, let's just sit next to each other and watch our daughters do cheer.
I believe that was our first one, your second one, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And now we're going into basketball wrestling season, so.
Oh boy, I'm glad I'm off for the rest of the
Yeah, dude, I'm so tired. All the time, I'm tired.
I think we're still doing kind of workouts and stuff like that, but baseball season's next for me, so.
Nice. Well, it is like now getting into the holiday season, so we'll see how much we can get in over the next few weeks. But today we have a special topic about a special person. How much do you know about Dorothy from Wizard of Oz?
I don't know anything.
Nice. That's good to know.
I'm coming in raw, baby.
I was going to say, that's how her entrance to Hollywood was. So, it's a pretty interesting story. It's kind of a sad story, but we are going to touch on Judy Garland today. Judy Garland, if you do not know who she is, like I stated, she is Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. Is her probably most famous role.
I was going to say that'd probably be the only thing I know her by.
Pretty sad life story, but she's also played in other movies like Meet Me in St. Louis is a very big one in the 1940s. She was very big in the 40s, mostly the 40s, but the 50s too, late 30s. Frequent on-screen partner with like Mickey Rooney. Do you know who that is?
Yeah. Yep.
And Gene Kelly from Dancing in the Rain, or Singing in the Rain, sorry. Was also collaborated with director Vincente Minnelli, who she actually married as well, which we'll get into that. So, with Judy Garland, we have a story of a young girl born Frances Ethel Gumm. So her name's Frances Gumm, and she's born in 1922 in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Not Michigan, but Minnesota.
I always forget there's a Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I do too. Like when I saw it, I'm like, oh shit. Like,
oh no, never mind.
Youngest child of an Ethel Gumm and a Frank Gumm. Her parents were vaudevillians, who settled in Grand Rapids to run a movie theater that featured vaudeville acts. Do you know what vaudeville is?
Oh yeah.
All right, so kind of the before movies, like that whole little.
Seth MacFarlane loves vaudeville.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like in the earlier seasons, he'd always have the vaudeville dancers.
Yep, I was gonna say it's like a song, dance routine, all that stuff. So she's Judy Garland's Irish. She's English, Scottish, and French Huguenot ancestry, and named after both of her parents and baptized as a Episcopalian. So her parents and her sisters called her Baby. And shared her family's flair for song and dance. She started working in the business at the age of 2 when she joined her elder sisters, Mary Jane, Suzanne Gumm, and Dorothy Virginia, also known as Jimmy Gumm, on the stage of her father's movie theater during a Christmas show, and they sang the chorus of Jingle Bells. The Gumm sisters performed there for the next few years when their mother played piano for them. So they were into show business pretty young. They really didn't get a shot, I feel like, to do anything other than vaudeville. So you're looking at this time, this is the 1920s. Vaudeville's still kind of the thing. Movie theaters are still silent films for the most part. And they are not as big, I guess, as like they will be. But vaudeville's still around too. So you still have the Ziegfeld girls, like the Florence Ziegfeld over in New York.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, you talk vaudeville, and every time you talk about that, I feel like you would only find that in more popular cities. You know, like you'd have to go to California to see it, or New York. So the fact that they're doing this in
Oh, I think the movie theaters were kind of all over those places. So like the vaudeville was like a way for these small towns to get something too. If you had to like traveling,
Yeah,
because for a while there, I believe the movies traveled too.
that's crazy.
Yeah, and the family. That is crazy because like nowadays you're just like, oh, yeah, I guess we could go see
Whatever. Yeah.
Smile 2. I'm not gonna go see it. I'll just wait for it to come out and stream straight to my fucking face in my living room. So
It'll be out in 2 weeks anyway.
yeah, it doesn't matter. But back then it was a little bit different. So the family would relocate though out of Minnesota, and they moved to Lancaster, California, in 1926, following rumors that her dad was homosexual. He had those inclinations.
Not back then.
Yeah, you don't want to do that in rural 1920s Minnesota. So he bought another theater out in Lancaster and did that. And him and his daughter, or his wife, began managing their daughters and working to get them into motion pictures. So that was their goal, get their daughters into movies. So as Garland rose to fame, her personal life became super complex. With people adored her, and she had her private struggles, which happens with most of these type of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Her career was filled with legendary performances, but often overshadowed by her ongoing battles with self-image, addiction, and mental health, which we will get into all these things. But Hollywood's kind of got a lot of expectations, especially back then.
Oh yeah.
And some of the stories around Garland are kind of crazy. Now, she was, we'll get into some of her marriages, where she was married 5 times.
I know that's okay. I scanned across that. I was like, God damn.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's common with Hollywood.
Yeah, I was going to say they weren't going to last long. She did have 3 kids. Liza Minnelli with Vicente Minnelli. Liza Minnelli is known in Hollywood still. Lorna Luft and Joey Luft with her producer husband Sidney Luft later. And most of her relationships were pretty turbulent. They were pretty crazy, influenced by her intense fame and personal challenges. So you're going to see when we go over this stuff that she like kind of gets a bad rep towards the end, I feel like she just kind of goes nuts. But she was very close to her kids, who would join the entertainment industry, and immensely talented, secured her place in Hollywood. Everyone still knows who Judy Garland is.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things where at least she's still remembered. I think history will redeem a lot of what she's been kind of accused of. But let's start in 1928, back where we were, with the Gumm sisters. They enrolled in a dance school of a woman named Ethel Meglin, who was a proprietor of the Meglin Kiddies dance troupe. And they appeared with the troupe at its annual Christmas show. So through them, the Meglin Kiddies, they made their film debut in a short subject called The Big Review from 1929. They performed a song and dance number called That's the Good Old Sunny South, followed by appearances in 2 Vitaphone shorts the following year called A Holiday in Storyland and The Wedding of Jack and Jill. So, they next appeared in Bubbles, and their final on-screen appearance together was in a MGM short called La Fiesta de Santa Barbara in 1935. So she kind of got popular with her sisters first.
Right.
The Gumm sisters.
It's like a Michael Jackson story.
The picture, yeah. But I'm sure you got it up. But
Yep.
pretty girls. Honestly, the least pretty of them all was probably Judy. Which is going to come back, and that's going to be a part of the story, though. There's a reason why I say that. So they would eventually tour the vaudeville circuit as the Gumm sisters, and that would take them to Chicago at the Oriental Theater, where they would meet George Jessel. Have you ever heard of George Jessel?
I have not.
So in 1934, George Jessel was the shit. He was a famous actor, singer, film producer. Very comedic stuff. He was around until I think the 80s he died, but he encouraged the group to choose a different name because the Gumm sisters was not gonna do it. Turns out everyone laughs at them for that. And their act was erroneously billed as the Glum sisters. They start making fun of them, which could be a lot worse nowadays. I mean, the Glum sisters, back then that's probably shitty. Several stories persist regarding the origin of their use of the name Garland is what they would go with. They say that some of them Some of the different origins come from George Jessel himself, saying it was named after a character in a Carol Lombard movie called 20th Century named Lily Garland, which was also playing at the Oriental at the time, which is why they probably said that.
Makes sense.
Another is they chose the last name of a drama critic named Robert Garland. And then Garland's own daughter, Judy Garland's daughter, Lorna, stated her mom selected the name when he announced that the trio looked prettier than a garland of flowers. So,
Okay.
I like to say it's that one. Let's go with that one.
Yeah.
Who knows? But when that name changed, it definitely helped their careers a lot. The word Garland would then be used for them in a TV special in 1954 when they're talking about it. George Jessel did mention, and this is end quote, "I think that I ought to tell the folks that it was I who named Judy Garland. Not that it would have made any difference. You wouldn't have hidden that great talent if you called her Tel Aviv Windsor Shell. You know, but her name when I first met her was Frances Gumm, and it wasn't the kind of name that was so sensitive a great actress like that should have." So, he's trying to take credit for it, is what I'm hearing. So, doesn't matter.
Shocker.
Really doesn't matter in the history of time. No one gives a fuck how she was named. But that was apparently a thing that people wanted to talk about. So in 34, they changed to the Garland sisters instead of the Gumm sisters. Frances changes her name to Judy, inspired by a Hoagie Carmichael song of the time. And the group breaks up not even a year later, in 1935, when Suzanne Garland, one of the sisters, flew to Reno and married a musician. So that just kind of ended the whole thing.
She just said, fuck it. You guys are on your own.
Yeah, it's Gumm or nothing. So
I ain't a Garland.
yeah, fuck this Garland shit. So in September 35, a guy named Louis Mayer, who you may know from MGM, like Mayer is one of the founders of MGM. He kind of co-founder of it. Metro Goldwyn Mayer or Meyer. So Louis Mayer is, if we ever get into it, man, I will let you know. He's a piece of shit.
Really?
He really was. Like, you know Harvey Weinstein, how they talk about... Yeah, he was one of them before Harvey.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So he asked a songwriter named Burton Lane to go to the theater, Orpheum Theater in L.A., to watch the Garland sisters and report to him what he saw. A few days later, Garland and her dad were brought for an impromptu audition at the studio, and she performed the song Zing Went the Strings of My Heart and Eli, Eli, a Yiddish song. The studio loved her. They immediately signed her to a contract with MGM. Without a screen test, she signed up. The studio did not know what to do with her because she was 13 years old. Older than a child star would be like Shirley Temple, but she was too young for like the adult roles. So what the hell do you do with it?
Right, especially back then.
Yeah. So the physical appearance was a dilemma because she was only 4 foot, about 5 foot, 4'11" and a half. And she was cute, or girl next door looks. So she wasn't really pretty in the conventional sense. Like, she wasn't like stunning in Hollywood style. She was like that cutesy girl.
Yep.
So self-conscious about her own appearance. She was super anxious about it. She went to school with many famous actresses at the time: Ava Gardner, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, who were like beauty in the conventional sense. She was a big money maker at the time, but she was the ugly duckling, they say. Very damaging effect on her. She definitely took it hard, and they don't think she ever got over it, which probably led to some of the stuff.
See,
later.
that's funny though, because I wouldn't consider her ugly.
No, I would think that she's like a very pretty girl.
You know, like
she's like, her sisters were pretty too. Like, they were all very pretty girls. Like, I don't understand, but that insecurity. Like, have you heard about the movie that just came out called The Substance?
Huh.
It's Demi Moore, and it's about, I haven't seen it or anything, but it's making a lot of waves because it's about, like, women's beauty standards in Hollywood and how it's just impossible. Like, there's one scene, I guess, that really hits women when they watch it where Demi Moore's character, like, is looking at herself in the mirror getting ready, and then she leaves, and she keeps coming back. She looks gorgeous, but she keeps coming back and trying to fix herself because she doesn't feel like she is. And
yeah,
I think
she doesn't feel Hollywood pretty.
No matter what, the women always feel like they're not enough.
Yeah.
Sounds like Judy was dealing with something like that at this time. Like I said, obviously we don't have those type of issues that women do, but I think men do in a sense too.
Yeah.
I know, like, I've done it where I've been like, damn, dude, I can't go out looking like this. I look fucking ugly as shit, dude.
Dude, I'm like that. Like, even last night, I was in, like, fucking my pajamas ready to settle down, and, you know, the wife was like, well, I want a snack, and I'm like, all right, so I'm not going to go to the store in, like, scrummy-ass fucking sweatpants and stuff, so I got dressed, you know?
Well, I think, like, in general, we just do that in, like, our everyday lives. Like I said, I'll look in the mirror some mornings, and I'm like, God, you look like shit, dude.
Yeah.
I need to lose like 15 pounds, or I need to fucking shave, or so. I can only imagine how much worse it is for women who are constantly judged by their looks on that kind of stuff.
See, and that's crazy to hear that was like that all the way back in the 30s and stuff like that. Even where are we at, the 50s now? Or are we still in the?
No, this is the 30s. Yeah, she's still a child.
You know what I mean? But it's still crazy because, I guess not too crazy, because that was still an era where kind of men did most of the.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much controlled the whole industry.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that men were in charge.
Well, her insecurity was exacerbated by Louis Mayer, who referred to her as his little hunchback. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, like, it was like, that's the guy who's running the joint? Like, and he's calling you little hunchback. Like, that can't make you feel good. So, for the next few years, she was photographed and dressed in plain garments or juvenile gowns to look younger and look like a girl next door. They had her wear removable caps on her teeth and rubberized discs to reshape her nose. So if you have to wear that shit in your movies, you probably feel shitty and ugly. Like,
yeah, because you're not pretty enough.
Hey, we want to put you in here, but you're a little busted. So let's what? But in 1935, 13-year-old Garland was in the midst of preparing for a radio performance on the Shell Chateau Hour when she learned that her dad was hospitalized. He had meningitis and his medical condition had taken a turn for the worse. He would die the next morning at age 49, leaving her devastated. So, Judy loses her dad, who has been kind of the backbone of their whole family. And her song for the Shell Chateau Hour was her first professional rendition of Zing With the Strings of My Heart. She performed at various studio functions and was eventually cast in a movie opposite Deanna Durbin, who was a very famous actress at the time, in a musical short called Every Sunday. The film helped show her vocal range and swing style with, and contrast it with Durbin's operatic type of voice, and served as an extended screen test for them. They were questioning the wisdom of having two girl singers on the roster, on whether they should even have it, because I don't know if you know how the movie system worked back then. It's not like nowadays where people would, like Brad Pitt. Hey, man, I want to make a movie for Warner Brothers, and then the next week I'm going to make one for Paramount, whoever pays the most. Back then, you were on a roster, so if Warner Brothers owned you, you couldn't make movies for anyone else. You had to be.
You made movies for.
And you signed a contract like, I have 8 movies with Warner Brothers, and then you can either re-up the contract or I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
She's working for MGM, so she could only work for MGM at the time. But if there was 2 singing girls on the roster, and they didn't need 2 singing girls, they would be like, dude, kick them off.
You're gone. Yep.
And no one wanted that at the time. Her first feature-length film was a loan out, and a loan out is when they would loan you out to a different company. Like, hey, Fox.
We need a girl, blah, blah, blah.
You need this girl? Singer. You can have her, and I want to use your actress in this movie. So they loaned her out to Fox in a movie called Pigskin Parade. You can bet you can guess what that's about. It's about football and musical. She was 10th billed after a host of different actors and actresses that people knew from the day. You guys probably would not know now. She sang 3 solos, including the Texas Tornado and the Balboa. She sang a special arrangement of You Made Me Love You, I Didn't Want to Do It to Clark Gable. And people probably know Clark Gable from Gone with the Wind. At a birthday party that the studio arranged for the actor. It was so well regarded that she performed the song in an all-star extravaganza when she sang to a photograph of him in Broadway Melody of 1938. So, she didn't really hit it running until MGM hit the winning formula. That formula is pairing her with someone named Mickey Rooney, a young man who would appear with her in a string of what they would call backyard musicals. They appeared in supporting characters in a B movie, which B movie is like not really gonna make the big bucks, called Thoroughbreds Don't Cry. And then she was cast in the fourth of a huge set of movies at the time called the Hardy Family movies, called Love Finds Andy Hardy. So Andy Hardy is like a young boy at the time, kind of like the boy next door who's looking to like live his life, and he's got his ma and pa, and he's got all these different things that people in the 30s or 40s would have listened to and been like, or watched and been like, oh yeah, this is a nice family movie. And it was a whole series of them. She was cast in the fourth one as a literal girl next door to his character.
Literally.
Yeah, so his love interest was already played by Lana Turner, which we'll have to do a whole nother thing on her one day. She's got a crazy story too. But they teamed up again as lead characters for the first time in a movie called Babes in Arms. Have you ever heard of that one?
Nope.
So Babes in Arms is a coming of age, like Broadway musical type movie. Like musicals were really big back then. You probably would have been pissed with movies at the time.
Probably. I can't stand musicals, man. I hate them.
But it did cause them to appear in 5 additional films, including Andy Hardy Meets Debutante and Life Begins for Andy Hardy. So she was...
Lots of Andy Hardy.
Yeah, Andy Hardy was Mickey Rooney's character, and it was a very big thing at the time. Something that Garland would mention, and this is where it starts getting a little dark, is Mickey Rooney, her, and all the other young performers were constantly given amphetamines to stay awake and keep up with the frantic pace, because they would make movies.
Yeah.
Like that. Like, it was just constant punching them out. Then they were given barbiturates to take before they went to bed so they could go back to sleep. So this would be a constant thing for the next few
Legit, just
years.
living off of pills, man.
Yeah.
Like, here, take this. Okay, movie's good. Here, take this. Go to sleep.
Yeah. We need you pumped up. You're ready to go.
Good morning. Here you are. Take these.
Yeah. This would lead to addiction for Judy. And it became a lifelong struggle. She hated the hectic schedule. She believes MGM stole her youth, which in a sense they did. Rooney denied that the studio was responsible. Rooney was a yes man for the studio. He's like, no. I loved it, man. It was great. Judy was responsible for her own addiction. She was never given any drugs by MGM. Mr. Mayer didn't sanction anything for Judy. No one on the lot was responsible for her death. Unfortunately, Judy chose that path. That's what he would say later in life. Spoiler alert, Judy's gonna die. Her weight was within a healthy range, but the studio constantly demanded that she keep dieting.
Hollywood diet, baby.
Yep. They went as far as to serve her only a bowl of chicken soup and black coffee when she ordered meals. So, like, you ain't allowed calories, Judy. They're going to starve you. She was plagued with self-doubt throughout her life. She had a very successful career, but it didn't matter because she needed constant reinsurance and that she was talented or even attractive.
Right.
So, obviously, this is not just an issue that affects just Judy. This is something that affected a lot of... I mean, this is not just a 1930s thing.
Right.
This is
Been
like...
happening in Hollywood.
Yeah, this is still probably happening to this day.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even probably worse with the amount of stuff. Like, if you go into LA, everyone looks like they have duck lips now. Like, it's... I don't understand how people think it's attractive, man. It's
I
like...
don't know. Yeah.
How are you doing today, baby? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like,
I don't get it, dude. I don't like it.
it creeps me out,
Yeah,
man.
it
That
does.
doesn't look real at all.
Yeah, your lips should not look like that.
Like Jennifer Coolidge from, oh, I want a hot dog real bad. Like, that chick, dude. I'm like, dude, she's funny. She's a funny lady, but god damn, you are not attractive. That did not help you age well. So, I don't know. I'm getting off topic, but let's get into the role we all know Judy for, which is 1938 when she was 16. She was cast as Dorothy Gale in the 1939 movie, which mostly everyone's seen in the world. If you haven't, you are missing out, honestly.
It's a great movie.
It's a legendary movie. It's The Wizard of Oz, based on a children's book from the year 1900 by L. Frank Baum. In the film, she sang the song for which she would be constantly identified afterward, and that is Over the Rainbow. They wanted to cast her in the role from the beginning, but Mayer actually didn't want her. He wanted to borrow Shirley Temple, but he was declined. And then they asked Deanna Durbin, but she was unavailable, so this resulted in Garland. So she got lucky in a sense, but also unlucky in this.
It'd be weird to see that movie without her as a cat. You know what I mean? Like now, like sitting on it, it'd be weird to see anybody else play that role.
Yeah, that's why when they've talked about remaking Wizard of Oz, I'm like, don't. Just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
like,
just-
it still holds up. It's almost 100 years old. It still holds up.
Yeah.
Like, let's not play around with stuff that doesn't need done. I can't imagine. I could imagine
It's gonna
Shirley
happen.
Temple.
It's
It
gonna
probably will, but the fact it hasn't yet is kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, you got to think what
This weekend, they have The Wiz.
Yeah.
Or not The Wiz. Wicked.
Wicked.
But I don't mind them like kind of building on that story without touching the original. Just don't redo the original.
I think they're going to. I think what they're going to do is build a prequel up to the story of the witches, and then it's going to lead in because they're going to introduce probably Dorothy at the end of the movie. And I haven't seen it yet, but I can promise you that's what's going to happen. You're going to see a Dorothy at the end, and then that's going to lead into the remake of Wizard of Oz.
Dude, I think that's just defying gravity.
Because I think that's what it is. I think they're testing the waters. Like, okay, we're going to do this story. How good does this, essentially a prequel, do?
Gross.
You know, and then, because it's obviously going to do great. Because the hype's crazy. And then they're like, all right, bam, new Wizard of Oz.
Don't do that. Don't do that to me.
It's going to happen.
Ugh. But, fun fact about Wizard of Oz, which I've always wanted to say, and I've never gotten to tell anyone this fact because I don't talk about Wizard of Oz that often. But, nothing to do with Judy Garland. Fun little, we're going to take a little shortcut. The guy who played the wizard from The Wizard of Oz, they told him he needed to get a coat for playing the wizard or whatever. He went and picked up a coat from because they didn't think it was wizardy enough or whatever. So he gets a green coat. He goes to a thrift shop or something and finds a coat, buys it, takes it. Turns out it is L. Frank Baum's coat, the author of Wizard of Oz.
No shit.
Yeah, so he actually had his coat inside the damn movie on accident. Crazy. What's the coincidence
there?
That's
a crazy fact.
Yeah, so I don't get to tell that one a lot, but that is nuts, isn't it?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just that doesn't seem real. No, so she was actually originally supposed to be blonde in this movie, which, thank God she's not, because there's no need. Shortly after they start filming, they agree. But her blue dress was chosen because it blurred the effect of her figure, which made her look younger and skinnier. So pretty much, they still thought she was too fat in The Wizard of Oz,
Jesus.
which is crazy to me that they would think that. Shooting commenced, and it went for about 6 months from late 38 to early 39, and it cost over $2 million.
Which is equivalent to $34 million last year.
Yeah, which is not actually that bad for the movies. I think Gladiator 2 that's coming out costs $250 to $300 million.
Right. This is crazy, dude.
Yeah. She kept busy with promotional tours, and she was shooting Babes in Arms as well during that, which was directed by Busby Berkeley. If you don't know who Busby Berkeley is, he was a very famous dance choreographer at the time. They went on a cross-country promotional tour, which included 5 shows a day appearance schedule for the 2 stars. That's a lot of stuff for that time, because it's not like you fly to a place. You have to, boom, 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 across the whole damn country.
Yeah.
Once again, put on a diet, cigarettes, chicken soup, coffee. That's it. To minimize her curves. They didn't want her to be curvy. She was an anti-smoker, people did say, and was allowed solid food. So whether that's true or not, that's up for debate. But she also had to swim and hike, and play tennis and badminton with her stunt double, which, nothing wrong with some exercise.
Right.
I agree with that, but being forced to is kind of weird. Yeah.
Did you go on that 3-mile hike today? No, you better get your ass out there.
Judy, you want to be a Gumm sister?
Are you a Gumm or a Garland?
Are you a Gumm or a Garland? It's time to pick your place in life. Obviously, The Wizard of Oz was a tremendous success. It cost, with the promotion and everything, $4 million, but coupled with the lower revenue that was generated by discounted kids' tickets, because they would discount them at the time, meant that it didn't actually return a profit until it was re-released in the 40s. So, at the time, it's critically successful, not financially yet, but it will be. It was nominated for Academy Awards at the 1939 Academy Awards, which is Oscars. Garland did receive her only Academy Award and it was an Academy Juvenile Award. They used to give out a juvenile for kid actors.
That way they weren't having to compete with the adults.
Exactly. Now they don't give a shit. They're like, you're competing with everyone.
If you're going to act, you better act great.
There's been some kids, I think, that have gotten some good stuff on there, too. But she got it for her work in The Wizard of Oz and Babes in Arms. Fourth person to receive the award, as well as the only one of 12 in history to ever be presented with one. After the film, she was pretty much one of the most bankable actresses in the U.S. So, with that comes the 40s, and with the 40s comes her adulthood. So Garland is no longer going to do the kid movies. She's at least going to try to get out of that.
Right.
You probably have never seen another Garland movie in your life.
I probably have not.
Honestly, I probably have not either. But the story itself is interesting, because in the 3 films that she would star in 1940, they were Andy Hardy Meets Debutante,
Another one.
Strike Up the Band, and Little Nellie Kelly. She would play, 2 of those she played kid roles, but the last one she played an adult role, where she played both a mother and a daughter. She did it to display her audience appeal and her physical appearance. She wanted to get out of that kid look.
Yeah.
It was a challenge. It required her to use an accent. Her first kiss, like a real kiss, and the only death scene of her career. Her co-star was George Murphy, and George Murphy at the time would have been like almost 40, which was kind of normal for a like 20-year-old woman and a 40-year-old man to be in movies together. He said the kiss was embarrassing. He felt like a hillbilly with a child bride. So
I read that.
So I don't know. Most of them, like, they would be okay kissing a like young girl. I mean, let's be real, that's Hollywood. It's kind of creepy like that. But Judy did not have that type of appeal to people. She was more like the little kid.
Yeah.
She was still in her teens. And then she got in her first serious adult romance with a band leader named Artie Shaw. Artie Shaw is also an author, if you've never heard of him. She loved him. Like, she's like, dude, Artie, all the way. Artie for life. And was devastated when he ran off with Lana Turner, the girl that she'd played in movies with.
Jesus.
In the early 40s, she began a relationship with musician David Rose, who was also 12 years older than her. And on her 18th birthday, when he was 30, he proposed to her. MGM was like, no, he's married, dude.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
To an actress and singer, Martha Raye, who was older at the time. And they agreed to wait a year to allow him to divorce Martha. During that time, she had a brief affair again with Johnny Mercer, who was a very famous songwriter at the time. And after they broke up, they got wed in 1941 when she was 19 years old. So Judy's looking for love in all the wrong places. She's definitely looking for something, it seems like, at this point. And the media called the relationship a true rarity with her and Rose. And they moved into LA, where he had room to build miniature trains in the backyard for her, like a pedo.
Weird.
Mean, obviously he's not. She's 19. It's all legal. But it's initially enjoyable, but MGM was like, dude, this is really not cool, and allegedly tried to separate the hell out of him. They, along with her mother, feared it would ruin her image. She is the girl next door. Like, you don't fuck up with that image. And in 41, she was pregnant with his kid. She had an abortion at the insistence of her mom and the studio, who were like, please don't get pregnant. We got shit to do. So, like, she wasn't even able to have a kid that she wanted, which kind of sucks for Judy. Rose was even hostile toward Garland, and the couple agreed to undergo a separation in 43 and divorce in 44. So Judy has gotten married once. How do you feel about where her life is going to go? Where do you think it is?
Just in that first paragraph. Red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. That's pretty much what it is. You don't see a bright future from here.
There is a few, like, highlights of her life still.
Yeah.
She did join a movie called For Me and My Gal with Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly, like I had mentioned earlier, was a great dancer, actor, singer. He would eventually become a good director and choreographer as well. She was given the glamour treatment in the movie presenting Lily Mars, in which she was dressed in grown-up gowns. So her lightened hair was also pulled up in stylish fashion. She was gonna do whatever she could to get rid of that kid look. But no matter what, she was never confident enough, and she never did escape the image.
Yeah.
So she had a second abortion, 1943,
Jesus.
when she became pregnant during an affair with the actor Tyrone Power.
God damn.
Yeah. And then she joined in 1944 her second biggest movie she ever did, which was Meet Me in St. Louis. Have you ever seen this one?
Nope.
No? I haven't either, but I definitely want to actually watch this one. This one is you don't give a shit about this movie. It's a musical.
Yeah.
But it's divided into seasons kind of thing, like seasonal vignettes.
Okay.
She introduced 3 songs that became very popular on this. One was the trolley song. I wouldn't be able to tell you if I heard it. The Boy Next Door, and the one that I know was Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. This was one of the first films in her career that gave her the opportunity to be the attractive leading lady, which she loved. The director was a man named Vicente Minnelli, and he requested that a certain makeup artist named Dorothy Ponadell be assigned to Garland. She refined her appearance, extended and reshaped her eyebrows, changed her hairline, modified her lip line, and removed her nose discs and her dental caps. So they completely took all this stuff off. She appreciated the results so much that that was pretty much the rest of her career. That was her makeup artist.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. Got all that stuff off, made her feel like a real lady. She didn't have to do the girl next door thing really anymore. Garland then went and had an affair with Orson Welles.
What is that, like number 6?
Yeah, she's definitely looking for love. Orson Welles is married to another actress named Rita Hayworth. Orson Welles you might know from the guy who did the War of the Worlds broadcast on the radio that scared the shit out of everyone. He also played in Citizen Kane as, like, he was the director and main character in that. Honestly, Orson Welles is kind of a douchebag. Like, he sounds like he's just a huge D-bag at the time. Like, I think I'm pretentious. They ended their affair, but they were still good afterwards. And then during the filming of Meet Me in St. Louis, she had huge conflicts initially with her director, but then they got hot and horny about it and entered into a relationship and got married.
You know what? We fight so much. Let's get married.
So once again, her director at this time was probably in his early 40s. She was in early 20s. They did have a daughter named Liza Minnelli, like her dad. And that marriage would last for a minute. The Clock was her first straight dramatic film, which was in 45. Critics loved it. She earned a profit. Most fans expected her to sing. She did not act again in a non-singing dramatic role for many years because she didn't sing in this one. Then she went and joined another singing one called the Harvey Girls. Introduced an Academy Award-winning song. This one did win Song of the Year. It's called On the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe, and Till the Clouds Roll By. So if you've never heard that song, it's got like kind of a like a train kind of like beat to it, and people like that a lot at the time. And that's going to end the early 40s for her. So she's now married to Vicente Minnelli, who will direct her in more films going forward. So the late 40s will be the last of her MGM career. She filmed something called The Pirate, and she suffered a nervous breakdown, placed in a private sanatorium because of it. She did complete the filming, but in July 47, she made her first suicide attempt. She cut her wrists with broken glass. Well, they weren't real severe cuts. I don't know how much she really wanted to do it, but I mean, she's now breaking down. She spent 2 weeks in the treatment at a center called the Austin Riggs Center Psych Hospital in Massachusetts. The movie came out. It was the first film which didn't make a profit for her since The Wizard of Oz. They say the main reasons for it failing were not only because of how much it cost, but also the expense of the shooting delays while she was ill, as well as the general public's unwillingness to accept her as an adult, really, in a sophisticated non-musical role. Following her work there, she co-starred for the first and only time with the famous actor Fred Astaire. He's very famous for even more than Gene Kelly, and he actually replaced Gene Kelly after Kelly broke his ankle in a movie called Easter Parade. That was Hollywood's highest-grossing musical. That is probably actually up there with Meet Me in St. Louis. I don't know if it is now, but I know Easter Parade was a huge one. Thrilled by the huge box office receipts of it, MGM teamed her and Astaire up in a new movie called The Barkleys of Broadway, and during the initial filming, she was taking prescription barbiturate sleeping pills with illicitly obtained pills containing morphine. So she's getting deeper into this stuff. And around this time, she also developed a serious problem with alcohol. This, in combination with her migraine headaches, led her to missing several shooting days. She would start missing work all the time.
Yep.
After being advised by her doctor that she would only be able to work 4 to 5 day increments with extended rest in between, the executive of MGM at the time decided to suspend her. And she got replaced in that Barkleys of Broadway by the actress Ginger Rogers, who did a lot of movies with Fred Astaire. Fred and Ginger were very popular. So we're looking at the downward spiral now. This is
Yep.
She hit her peak. We're
Yep.
now going down. The stars that burn brightest. When her suspension was over, she got summoned back to work and ultimately performed 2 songs as a guest in a biopic called Words and Music. Her last appearance with Mickey Rooney, which seemed like they had at least cordial working relationship. It sounds like Mickey threw her under the bus at the end there.
Right.
Despite the all-star cast, it barely broke even. Didn't do much. Having regained her strength as well as some needed weight during her suspension, she felt much better, and she returned to MGM to replace a pregnant June Allison for the musical film called In the Good Old Summertime. She was sometimes late arriving in the studio during the making of this picture, though. She managed to complete it 5 days ahead of schedule. So she was late sometimes, but she did get it done quick. And her daughter, Liza, actually made her film debut in this one at the age of 2. And it was a huge success at the box office eventually. She was then cast in the film adaptation of Annie Get Your Gun, which is the title role of Annie Oakley. She was going to play Annie Oakley. Nervous at taking this role.
I've actually heard of that one.
Yeah, that you probably.
I've never watched it, but I've heard of it.
Annie Get Your Gun was also a remake from the. It was identified with someone called Ethel Merman, who was a very famous actress. And there was a movie prior to this. It's a remake. Anxious about appearing in an unglamorous part after breaking from juvenile parts and disturbed by her treatment at the hands of Busby Berkeley. She did not like Busby Berkeley. Because Berkeley was a huge... he would call her out for her lack of effort, her attitude, her enthusiasm. She complained to Mayer, trying to have him fired from it. And she just began arriving late to the set and didn't even appear sometimes. She's just becoming hard to work with. She doesn't want to work with Berkeley. She doesn't want to go back into this whole, not leading lady, pretty kind of thing. This is a role where Annie Oakley is not a pretty lady. She's supposed to be a rough, tough, gun-toting, rootin'-tootin' son of a bitch. And then, when that didn't happen, she also went and did electroconvulsive therapy for depression. So, she got fired.
Yep.
It ends up she gets fired and replaced by Betty Hutton. She then went and did an extensive hospital stay again in Massachusetts, in which she was weaned off her medication and able to eat and sleep normally. So she's not being fixed.
Yep.
Returns to LA heavier in the fall of 49 and joins Gene Kelly for another movie called Summer Stock. Took 6 months to complete, and to lose weight, she went back on the pills. Mm-hmm. And what do you know when you go back on pills? What happens? You go right back into the fucking cycle.
Yep.
She began showing up late or not at all. It was decided that she needed an additional number at the end of filming, so she agreed to do it and provided the song called Get Happy. She lost 15 pounds, looked more slender by this time. Get Happy was the last segment of the film to be filmed, and it was her last picture for MGM. When it was released in the fall of 1950, it drew big crowds, racked up very respectable box office receipts, and because of the costly shooting delays caused by Garland, it still posted a loss of $80,000. So now she's costing the studios money.
Yeah.
You
becoming a liability.
Yeah, you're a liability, so that's probably why it was your last MGM film.
And it's weird that she would even get a job after that, because that's her third job that she's been fired from.
Yeah, it's
within 2 years. Okay, well, you're obviously...
You start seeing, as you can see, they're starting to come less and less, though.
Yeah.
She then gets cast in the film Royal Wedding with Fred Astaire again. And she failed to report to the set on multiple occasions, and the studio suspended her contract. She was replaced by Jane Powell, Reputable biographies following her death stated that after this latest dismissal, she slightly grazed her neck with broken glass, requiring only a band-aid, but at the time the public was informed that she had slashed her throat. So, it sounds like she needs that attention, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah. She's not getting the attention she did when she was a teen child actress, so...
And she wants to be looked at as like a leading lady.
Yeah.
She does say, all I could see ahead was more confusion at this time. I wanted to black out the future as well as the past. I wanted to hurt myself and everyone who would hurt me. And then they parted ways with MGM. She did, after 15 years. So at this point, she's kind of in a hazy place. She doesn't have a studio backing her up anymore. So she starts becoming a frequent guest on Kraft Music Hall, hosted by a friend of hers named Bing Crosby. I'm sure you've heard of Bing.
Yep.
Bing is very famous for many things, but he was also a good friend of Garland's. After her second suicide attempt, knowing she was depressed and running out of money, he invited her on the radio show. And she made 8 appearances during the show, which immediately reinvigorated her career, brought her right back. And then she went and toured 4 months to sell out crowds in Europe. And so the early 50s, 1951, she's going to start to come alive like a phoenix.
Yep.
She plays sold-out audiences in England and Ireland and Scotland, and the successful comeback concert tour was the first of her many comebacks. She starts doing vaudeville, which, as you remember, is what she started with.
Yep.
With Al Jolson songs. And she completes shows as tributes to him. She did a show in the London Palladium in April, and she said afterwards, I suddenly knew that this was the beginning of a new life. Hollywood thought I was through. Then came the wonderful opportunity to appear at the London Palladium, where I can truthfully say Judy Garland was reborn. Her appearances lasted for 4 weeks, where she received great reviews, standing ovation, described by the Palladium manager as the loudest he's ever heard. Her engagement there exceeded all previous records for the theater, and she was called one of the greatest personal triumphs in show business history at the time. She got a special Tony Award, and then she divorced Vincente Minnelli. She then marries Sidney Luft, her tour manager in California, and gave birth to a daughter named Lorna Luft, who also becomes this actress and singer. And then in 55, she gives birth to her son Joey as well. So she's now restarted her career. She's coming back to Hollywood. She's trying again.
Yep.
She appears with James Mason in the Warner Brothers film A Star is Born in 1954. So this is actually another one I forgot she did. A Star is Born. Have you ever seen the new one with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga?
Mm-hmm.
I'm off the deep end. That stuff. They start singing that. That's a remake of the 1970s one with Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson.
But this was the original.
Nope,
50.
this is not the original. So that was a remake of this one in the 50s.
Okay.
And this is a remake of the one. Like, this movie's been remade every, 20, 30 years it gets remade. Kind of the same story, but, different time periods.
Yep.
So it's actually kind of cool. The original was in 1937.
And we talked about it earlier. Yeah.
She and her husband produced the film through their production company, Sidney Luft and her, and they got George Cukor to direct. George Cukor was a very famous director at the time. Large undertaking, and she was fully dedicated. Shooting progressed. She began making the same pleas of illness, though, that she often made during the final films. She's now, saying she's sick all the time. She doesn't want to show up. This is the problem she's having. Cost gets overrun. Angry confrontation. And she gets to have angry confrontations with the head of Warner Brothers now. This ain't Louis Mayer. This is Jack Warner. Jack Warner is a prick. To the point of, Jack Warner pretty much, the story between him and his brothers for the Warner Brothers is, crazy, too.
I've heard of that story.
Yeah, he's an asshole. Principal photography wrapped in 54, and the Born in a Trunk medley was filmed as a showcase for her and inserted over the director's objections. It was released, world premiere, 1954, September of it. Met with critical acclaim, popular acclaim. Everyone loved it. So it actually made some money. It was still popular after many weeks, drawing huge crowds, grossed over $6 million, which would be $54 million today's money. It did not make back its cost, though, and it ended up losing money. As a result, She expected a secure position, and it didn't happen. So no more films for her there. She was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress, though, and she was expected to win it too. Like, she did really good. She didn't attend the ceremony because she had just given birth, so a TV crew was in her hospital room with cameras and wires to give her acceptance speech. And then the Oscar was won by Grace Kelly.
Oh,
yeah, the camera crew packed up, and before Kelly could even reach stage, Groucho Marx sent Garland a telegram after the award ceremony declaring her loss the biggest robbery since Brinks. So people felt she got robbed in this one, and she was in the hospital waiting for it, and she just never got it. Grace Kelly would go on to marry the Prince of Monaco and leave Hollywood anyway. Time labeled her performance as just about the greatest one-woman show in modern movie history at the time. She did win the Golden Globe, but as we know, the Golden Globes are just not the same as an Oscar. She then played in a movie called Judgment at Nuremberg in '61, which she was also nominated again, didn't win anything. That's about the trial of like the Holocaust, all the Nazis afterwards. She played in an animated movie called Gay Puree and Child is Waiting with Burt Lancaster. Her final film would be called I Go On Singing in '63. Her movie career is over.
yeah.
Which sucks that she had to have it end with that whole like waiting in the hospital for an Oscar and never came kind of thing.
Isn't that crazy?
That's shitty. That's so shitty. But that's why you don't count your chickens before they hatch.
That's right.
So she appears in TV specials, which if you know anything about TV was a new thing in the 50s.
Yeah.
So like people were like, oh shit, TV is lesser than movies. Like you guys are lesser people, the TV actors.
Yeah, you can't afford to go to movies. That's why you have to watch
But
television.
what happened is people who were out of like popularity at that time did go to TV for a second wind.
Yep.
So she did that. She appeared in television specials beginning in '55. The first was in the debut of an episode of Ford Star Jubilee, which was the first full-scale color broadcast ever on CBS. She signed a huge 3-year, $300,000 deal with the network of CBS, and she did one additional special, which was a live concert edition of General Electric Theater. And then Lufs and CBS broke down in dispute, and she didn't do anymore. She then performed for 4 weeks at a New Frontier Hotel on the Vegas Strip for $55,000 per week. She was the highest paid entertainer in Vegas at the time. Then she got laryngitis. Jerry Lewis filled in for one performance while she watched from a wheelchair. And her performances were so successful that her run was extended extra week. She then, later that year, returned to the Palace Theater, site of her two-a-day triumph, opened in September, again to crazy good reviews. But in 1959, she was hospitalized when she got hepatitis. Yeah, she got the titus. Over the next few weeks, several quarts of fluid were drained from her body until she was released from the hospital in a weak condition and was told by doctors she probably had 5 years or less to live. Even if she did survive, she would be semi-invalid and would never sing again. So, she felt greatly relieved at this diagnosis at first. The pressure was off for me for the first time in my life, she said. She didn't have to worry about shit. She recovered and returned to the stage at the Palladium and felt so warmly embraced by the British that she announced she was going to move to England permanently. So she's just done with America. She's like, fuck you guys. Yep. England seems to like me. You guys don't seem to. In '60, she started writing her autobiography called The Judy Garland Story with Fred Finkelhoff. They recorded conversations about her life to be used in producing a manuscript and worked on her autobiography on and off throughout the 60s, but they never did complete it. Portions of her unfinished autobiography were included in the 2014 biography, Judy Garland on Judy Garland. She then did a concert appearance at Carnegie Hall on '61. Many consider it the greatest night in show business history. 2-record album called Judy at Carnegie Hall was certified gold and won Grammy Award, like huge. Actually, to be honest, my dad has this album.
Really?
I believe he does. Yeah, I believe he has this record at home. Because it was very famous. I think my grandma and everyone really liked it. She then, with this last 5 years of life, decided to do the Judy Garland show.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so they do a whole show where she had like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yep, no, I've heard of that. Yep.
Yeah, it was deemed at the time to be the biggest talent deal in TV history when it was made. She said as early as 55 she would never do a weekly TV series, but guess what? Money talks.
Mm-hmm.
In And in the early 60s, she was in a financially seriously bad situation. She was several $100,000 in debt to the IRS. She didn't pay taxes for a few years, and Star is Born was not the movie that like she wanted it to be. So she received nothing from it. She did a third special, Judy Garland and her guests Phil Silvers and Robert Goulet. The Garland show was critically praised, but for a variety of reasons, it only lasted one season, was canceled. It was nominated for 4 Emmys. Doesn't matter. She had a 6-month affair with the actor Glenn Ford.
Jesus Christ.
Because that's just what she does. And her husband wrote about the affair in his biography as well. And the relationship began in 1963 while she was doing her TV show. Glenn Ford would attend tapings, sitting in the front row while she sang. And he was credited with giving her one of the more stable relationships of her later life, though. It was ended by Ford, who was a notorious womanizer, when he realized that she wanted to marry him. He's like, nah, that ain't me.
Yep. I like to hit it, but I don't...
I'm going to quit it, though.
Yeah.
She was a lifelong Democrat, active Democrat, member of the Hollywood Democratic Committee. She was big in the civil rights movement. She donated money to tons of campaigns, including Kennedy and Roosevelt. She escorted Brigadier General Benjamin Davis to a reception honoring the general at the home of Ira Gershwin. He was the first black general and highest-ranking black officer in the military. Something that she did do in 1947 that we didn't get to is she joined the Committee for the First Amendment, which was a group formed by Hollywood celebrities in support of the Hollywood 10 during the House of Un-American Activities Committee. Do you know what that is?
No idea.
So we were in a Red Scare at the time. You know what the Red Scare is?
Yep.
Where everyone just believed everyone was a communist.
Yep.
So Joseph McCarthy was a congressman in the U.S., like House of Representatives or whatever he was. And what he did is he started saying that there was communists all over the place. Like, you're a communist. Your neighbor might be a communist. That started to hit into Hollywood, where they believed that many Hollywood people were communists. So they attacked 10 people in Hollywood and said that they were communists. She was not one of them, but she was one that defended them. Because some may have been communists, but some of them weren't. Like Dalton Trumbo was a screenwriter. He was just blackballed for life. Like, he made a bunch of movies. He was a great writer for movies, and he made different pseudonyms, like different names that he wrote his movies under instead of his own, which they found out later was him. Because you couldn't hire him at that point; that you would be banned.
Yeah,
just completely.
Yeah, you do not
destroyed
hire
him.
this man.
Yeah. So she defended them. Before every single time that they would have a hearing on this kind of stuff, she would definitely give them words of encouragement, things like that. She was a friend of President Kennedy and his wife Jackie, and she would go visit them in Massachusetts. She would call Kennedy weekly, often end her calls by singing the first few lines of Over the Rainbow. That'd be fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call the president and sing Over the Rainbow. You just the fuck are you doing, man? They would both be dead before the decade's out.
Yeah, that's crazy.
She was friends with a lot of other celebrities, and she actually took part in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. So she was very, very activist.
And this is all in her later years, right?
Some of this, yeah, 60s.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of it's in the 40s and 60s. Okay.
She held a press conference to protest the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham that resulted in the death of 4 young African-American girls. They attended the funeral of the victims during the press conference. They announced that they were going to do that. So, yeah, super big activist as well. She took her final years to heart. She did sue for divorce on Sidney Luft for mental cruelty in 1963. She asserted that he had repeatedly struck her while he was drinking and that he had attempted to take her children from her by force. And she filed for a divorce from him on several occasions, but they always reconciled, but not this time. After her TV series was canceled, she returned to work on the stage, obviously, and she did a tour of Australia in 1964 that ended really badly. Her first 2 concerts were in Sydney, where they were held in the Sydney Stadium because no concert hall could accommodate the overflow of everyone who wanted to see her. Both went well and performed well, but her third performance in Melbourne started an hour late, and the crowd of 7,000 was angered by her tardiness and believed she was drunk, so they booed and heckled her and she fled the stage after 45 minutes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'd be so embarrassed. She later characterized the Melbourne crowd as brutish, and she got a negative press response from it. She then married her tour promoter, Mark Heron, because she can't be alone, off the coast of Hong Kong. Even though she wasn't officially divorced from her last husband. So during their divorce, she testified that Heron beat her after she divorced him.
Jesus.
Yeah, she didn't last long. It was like less than a year. He claimed that he only hit her in self-defense, so... Jesus Christ.
I did it in self-defense, you hear?
She needed a spanking, you hear? For much of her career throughout the 50s and 60s, her husband had been her manager, so she eventually parted ways with him professionally as well. And then she signed with agents Freddie Fields and David Begelman, and then also parted ways with them after she found out that they were mismanaging her funds and embezzling some of her earnings. She owed around $500,000 in personal debts and IRS debts. Ugh. So she got tax liens. So she was left in a desperate situation, saw her sell her home at a price far below its value, and then she got cast in a movie again. The role of Helen Lawson in the very famous movie Valley of the Dolls in 1967. She got treated really poorly by the director.
Shocker.
She was primarily hired just to get publicity for the film. And then she got fired from the film.
Of course she did. Didn't see that coming.
And then an author of the book, Valley of the Dolls, that it was based on, said that I think Judy will always come back. She kid's about making a lot of comebacks. But I think she has a kind of thing where she has to get to the bottom of the rope and things have to get very, very rough for her. Then with amazing inner strength that only comes of a certain genius, she comes back bigger than ever.
And then she doesn't complete the film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So she returned to the stage. One last U.S. appearance in New York in 1967. 27 show stand, performed with her kids. She wore a sequin pantsuit on stage. Earned more than $200,000 from her final run there. So she's pretty much working because she has to at this point. Like,
Right,
she
yeah.
does not have a choice. And then from her final run, she 75% share of the profits generated by her. On closing night at the Palace, federal tax agents seized the majority of it.
Yep.
So she had to pay the taxes. By early 1969, her health was so bad, she performed in London at a nightclub for a 5-week run and made her last appearance in a concert in Copenhagen in March of 1969. She got her final divorce figured out, and she married her 5th and final husband, because she ain't going out without 5. She married nightclub manager Mickey Deans, and she would eventually be found dead by Mickey in the bathroom of her rented house in London, June 22nd, 1969, at the age of 47. They stated the cause of death was an incautious self-overdosage of barbiturates. Her blood contained the equivalent of 1.5 grain Seconal capsules, which is 97 milligrams. Yeah, Thurston, the coroner, stressed that the overdose had been unintentional and no evidence suggested she intended to kill herself. Her autopsy showed no inflammation of her stomach lining and no drug residue in her stomach, which indicated the drug had been ingested over a long period of time rather than in a single dose. Her death certificate stated her death was accidental. 25 barbiturate pills were found by her bedside table, half empty, like the
container.
prescriptions, yeah.
Yeah.
And another bottle of 100 pills was still unopened. They had nevertheless been... The British specialist who attended her autopsy stated she had nevertheless been living on borrowed time because she had cirrhosis of the liver. But a second autopsy conducted, she had no evidence of alcoholism or cirrhosis, so who knows. Her co-star of Wizard of Oz, Ray Bolger, who played the Scarecrow, commented at her funeral, she just plain wore out. She had her body embalmed and clothed in the same gray silk gown she wore at her wedding. And there was a huge eulogy at the funeral on June 27th, my birthday, 1969. And many people showed up for it. Upon her death, her estate came, despite having earned millions of dollars during her career, her estate came to $40,000. Tons of criminal mismanagement of her financial affairs by her representatives and staff, along with her generosity toward her family and various causes, resulted in her poor financial situation at the end of her life. So, like most people who get rich, their family takes advantage of them. Her last will that she signed in 1961, she made many generous bequests that could not be fulfilled because her estate didn't have the money anymore. Her daughter worked to pay off her mom's debts with the help of Frank Sinatra,
Yep.
family friend. And in 1978, a selection of her personal items were auctioned off by her ex-husband with support of their daughter, Lorna, and their son, Joey. So tons of stuff were given away. So that's the story of Judy Garland's life. What do you think of it?
I feel like a lot of child actors, I feel like that's the life of a lot of child actors. Like, look at Macaulay Culkin. You know what I mean?
He seems to be on the upswing.
And he is definitely on the upswing, but for a long time there, he was messed up, dude. The dude was on a lot of drugs. He, just kind of, it wasn't there,
Yeah. One of these days, we're going to have to get into, like, the 80s and 90s kid actors who were, like...
Yeah.
Like, you can go into the Lost Boys and see those... Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, they were just raped on set. Like, shit like that.
We talked about that.
Yeah, we did it before. Like, it's just crazy that even happens.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think it's weird how repetitive the cycles came and how nobody tried to even stop her. Everyone just kind of ran with it, you know what I mean? Like...
Yeah.
It just kept happening and happening and happening and happening. Like,
and we don't even know some of it. Like, she was probably, like, molested, sexually abused, like, for sure. Like, there's no way she wasn't.
Right.
Louis Mayer has been known to do that. So, I just...
False. We don't know that for sure.
We don't know that. That's an allegation that is not proven. But it is proven that Mayer has done it in the past others.
Yes,
so.
yes, but not to...
But, I will say, Garland... was very famous for her voice.
Yeah.
Like, Somewhere Over the Rainbow is an amazing song to this day. Like, people cover it all the time.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz will stand the test of time. People will see Judy Garland.
Yeah.
You knew Judy's name before we did this, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. She's been dead for 60 years.
Yeah.
And people still know her name because she is Dorothy. She's Dorothy. So, then we didn't even get to some of the crazy shit. Like, with, like, when she did the... Wizard of Oz, like, just the set of Wizard of Oz was crazy in itself. Like,
yeah, it was weird that they didn't really dive so much into the Wizard of Oz.
Which, yeah, we still have, I think, some on there. Not so much with Wizard of Oz, but, like, she had some parts in Wizard of Oz where, like, the snow in the one scene when they're walking through the field and it starts snowing on them, that's all asbestos.
Yeah.
Like, that's all asbestos. Like, at the time, they didn't know asbestos was, like, really bad for you, but, like, they're all just swimming in asbestos in that scene, so.
Or the one scene where one of the midget actors is actually hanging. That, he's actually hanging in the background. I've seen videos of it.
Yeah, which is, I don't, they say that's not real, but I don't know for sure. But I do know for sure the witch, the one who played the
Wicked Witch?
Wicked Witch, yeah. Really nice lady, but she actually, like, on set, they did the whole thing where, like, the puff of smoke comes and she disappears. Well, she burned herself with, like, 2nd and 3rd degree burns, and then they wanted her to do it again, and she's like, nah, man, like, no, what?
Dude, that's crazy.
So, yeah, there's a lot of problems on that set.
But you gotta think, like, what were they using to do that back in the 30s?
Like, you're using some shady
Nowadays, it'd be weird if you got burned.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, wait, how did the CGI burn you? Yeah. So... No, her voice was amazing. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas is a famous song we still sing today. Some of those Akasin Topeka songs or whatever that I was talking about, that's something that, like, people, not so much now. We don't know it now because this is from a different time frame. But
yeah,
like,
whole different era.
But she had a very famous voice. And she was the girl next door. So seeing the girl next door probably in the 60s grow up to die from all these things, like, everyone was probably looking at like, this is just messed up. Like,
but that's what was crazy, is that's why nobody was I don't feel like anybody was really shocked, like, oh, she finally, she OD'd.
Yeah, by that point they're probably like, Garland's been known to have all these issues in Hollywood now. She never shows up on time. But they probably put it on her, all of it.
Yeah.
Like, they probably didn't know at the time to look further back. She was billed as the little girl with the leather lungs at some points. So she'd always sounded mature for her age. She always had, like, a very strong voice for a little girl. Kind of like an Elvis Presley as a girl. I feel
right,
like.
yeah, that's funny because that's what I was seeing in my head, because
like
his story is pretty crazy too.
Yeah, he's got a crazy one as well. They say that she resembled that of a woman with a heart that had been hurt. George Jessel called that when she was 12 years old. Like, and I mean, that ends up being kind of her life story. she might have been made up in costume, look like a little girl. She didn't sing like one, and I think that like Hollywood chewed her up and spit her out in a sense.
Well, it's weird. They kept they chewed her up, spit her out, but she was a gum that kept finding her way back into the mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, she's a Gumm sister.
She's a gum sister.
What do you expect, man?
Living up to that name.
Yeah. So, her live record of the Somewhere Over the Rainbow is in the Library of Congress. It is saved. So if there is like a huge disaster of humanity, it will be saved.
That's crazy.
So they will have that. Fred Astaire says she's the greatest entertainer who ever lived, or probably will ever live. An amazing girl. She could do anything without rehearsing and come off perfectly. She interacted with her audience at her shows. Like, she was considered a triple threat. She could sing, she could act, she could dance.
Yeah, she could do it all.
But her public image was a life of struggle, really. So, do you got any other final words on our girl Judy?
No, I think it was a fun topic. Like when we said that that's what we were gonna kind of go in. I'm glad I went in blind. You know, I always like doing that just because
it helps. Yeah, to kind of get the reactions too, to see how someone who doesn't have any idea about Judy Garland except her name,
right,
what her life's like.
But like I said, it was really weird though because it wasn't hard to catch on to her patterns like early into her biography. I was like, oh boy, yep, here we go. You kind of see it coming.
Yeah, there's movies. There is a movie with Renee Zellweger that just came out a few years ago that was up for awards. It's called Judy. It's about her whole life, like the last part of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably, I've never seen it, but I hear it's pretty solid. Like, she did really well with it.
See, I wish they would. I mean, I feel like when you have like actors and actresses, with life stories like that, like they did do a movie with Elvis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From start when he was a kid, like telling the whole story. I love movies like that. Because you learn a lot, dude. It's sweet, and I think she would be someone that deserves that full story, not just the.
And it might be more than that. I just know that Renee Zellweger is an older lady at this point, so she was playing the older, like, drunk, the pilled up,
affair loving,
barely showing up for work, kind of like the very fucked up Judy.
Yeah,
and I think that her daughter followed her path in a sense. Liza Minnelli did have some problems like that. I remember seeing as a kid in the newspapers or the little press clippings on the edge of the grocery store lines.
Yeah.
So, no, if you don't know anything else about Judy, go look into some of it because she does have a very interesting life, and we only kind of touch surface on it because we only have so much time that we try to keep it on. But I've never seen that movie. I probably will, just to see like how much of what we just like talked about.
I do. Every time we bring up a movie about something, I always find myself watching it. Yeah.
So I might have to check out Judy and see what it is. It might be up my cup of tea or not. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my final thoughts on Judy. I don't think we'll probably do another one on her, but I'm sure we'll get some other people over the years that either have better or worse lives than Judy.
Right.
But until then, I'm Wolf.
I'm Badge.
Wolf out.